Good morning, everybody. So hopefully you have already completed your study guide, and this video is just kind of going to help you go through your answers. If you have not completed your study guide, well then this video is going to give you the answers. Either way, as long as you end up at the end of the video with having a completed first page of your study guide, that's all that matters. So let's start off and let's get this going. So number one, it's looking at asking you what kind of a map, a political or a physical map, would show man-made features like boundaries or capitals. Well, that's going to be a political map. So things like boundaries are not something that you're going to be able to see in, nature. You can't walk out to the Canadian-US border and see a line painted on the ground. So that would be a political map, which means that for number two, that's looking for natural features like landforms, so things like mountains or rivers, deserts, stuff like that. That would be a physical map. That's something that you can actually physically see. Number three, it's asking for the lines that divide the Earth. Those are the ones that go east and west. That would be your lines of latitude. And then north and south are going to be your lines of longitude. Number four, the four cardinal directions. Hopefully you know what these are. It's the ones that you're going to find on the face of a compass. It's north, south, east, and west. Number five, you're putting them together to create your intermediate directions. So what is in between your four cardinal directions? So you're going to have northeast and northwest, and you're going to have southeast and southwest. Number six, what is the relative location of St. Louis, Missouri? So you can say that it's on the Mississippi River, it's in Missouri, it's west of Illinois, it's close to Alton, it's west or east of Kansas City, all kinds of things. As long as you're describing kind of generally where it's at, then you're giving the relative location of St. Louis, Missouri. Number seven, this type of location uses coordinates. So relative location is going to tell you about where it's at. If you're using coordinates, I want to know exactly where it's at, or absolutely where it's at, and that's absolute location. Number eight, what are the five themes of geography? So again, if you remembered, I heard some people that were, when they were going through this, using the acronym Mr. Help. So remember that that is to help you remember the five themes of geography. So the M is migration, the R is region, C is HE, it's the he part of help, and you get human environment and interaction. You get location is the L, and P is place. Those are your five themes of geography. Number nine, what is the most accurate physical representation of the Earth as a model? That would be on a globe, because with the globe you can actually, you'll scale it down, but everything stays the same. So if Africa moves to 1/1000th of a percent of the size, which is about what you would get with a globe, then Africa moves to 1/1000th of a percent of the size as to what you would see. So it's actually going to look fairly accurate as compared to what it would be in real life. So let's scroll down and let's move on to the next set. So number 10, it's asking what type of map would I use to find the Rocky Mountains? So again, I'm looking for something physical, something that I would actually be able to see, so that would be a physical map. 11, what type of map would I use to find a border between two countries? Again, I'm not going to be able to see this on a painted line, so it's a political map. 12, what are the five things that define culture? So moving into unit number 2, we started to talk about culture before we started to talk about Russia, and culture defines things like symbols, language, norms, values, artifacts. All of these things are part of our culture. They are all five things that you could use to define culture. So symbols, things like, for Christians, it would be the cross. If you're Jewish, it would be the Star of David. Stuff like that. Language, obviously, big part of culture. Norms, what are some things that you would normally do? Like when you get into a elevator, what do? Do you turn around and face the door, or do you face the wall? Do you shake hands with someone, or do you bow? Those are all kinds of norms, things that you do, behaviors, normal behaviors, that type of thing. Values, what are things that you appreciate? What are things that you, belief systems that you abide by? Thou shalt not steal, that kind of stuff. And the last one is artifacts. Those are just things that we collect. So like between knickknacks, or whether or not we use AirPods or your phone, all of those kind of things are part of your culture. They are all artifacts. 13, what is the difference between material and non-material culture? Well, pretty straightforward. Material culture is going to have things. Like, it's the collection of stuff. It's the collection of clothes and shoes and hats and AirPods and all that kind of stuff. Non-material culture is going to be built on the belief system and values and that kind of stuff. Not something that you're really going to be able to reach out and touch. 14, what are some examples of culture? There's all kinds of examples of culture that you could put here. I just put some ones that were kind of basic ones that I thought we would be able to use pretty easily and straightforward. So things like dress, religion, entertainment, dancing, hairstyle. Those are just some basic ones that are all part of culture. But culture is really everything that you make of it. And your culture is unique to you. 15, what's the mountain range that separates the Asian part of Russia from the European part of Russia? And that's the Ural Mountains. 16, what type of terrain makes up the majority of found in Russia? That's going to be tundra. So remember that tundra is going to be real rough and rocky, very kind of frozen land. It makes up most of that Siberian plain where you're going to, you'd find grass and you find some trees or stuff like that, but they're all stuff that's designed that is, gone through evolution enough that they can survive there in the tundra, in the cold, without the rain, without, the heat or any kind of that kind of stuff. All right, scrolling up a little bit, we'll get to question number 17. What are the major resources that are found in Russia? So we got natural gas, timber. Those are the big two, especially if you've been paying attention to the news at all. Those are some that they can't really get out right now. So those are the big two. Oil, coal, and iron are also there, but the big two are the natural gas and the timber. 18, permafrost. What creates agricultural challenges? Well, you can't farm frozen ground. It's as simple as that. 19, the longest river in Europe that stretches from Moscow to the Caspian Sea. That's the Volga River. 20, what's the name of the desert that makes up the southern part of this region? So we're moving into unit number 3. We're starting to talk about North Africa with this question. So that would be the Sahara Desert. 21, what language and religion do they speak and practice? Well, they speak Arabic. That's going to be the one that's going to dominate most of North Africa, and the religion is going to be Islam. 22, what are the major industries in the region that is economically built upon? Well, oil is number 1. As with most areas, oil is number 1. Agriculture is coming, though. They are still, while the Sahara is not stretched as far enough that it has, really made it that oil is the only one that's there, agriculture is growing, and industry is also getting bigger and bigger and bigger in this region, which leads to the third one, which is trade. Because of that Mediterranean Sea and access to the Atlantic and the Indian Oceans through the Mediterranean and the Red Sea with the Suez Canal in between, it really does allow for trade to be a big factor in this region. 23, ancient Egypt is broken into how many different kingdoms that are followed by periods of civil unrest called their intermediate periods? There are 3 kingdoms. There's the Old, the Middle, and the New. 24, the fall of the Romans. Which group took over? That would be the Arabs. 25, what were some of the impacts of the Arab invasion? Well, Arab culture takes over. So it goes from having the indigenous cultures that were there, the Egyptians were there, the Roman culture was there in some places, but you had the Berbers that were also there. There were a bunch of other groups that were in between. And really, after the fall of the Roman Empire and the invasion of the Arabs in 700 AD, the Arab culture really takes over. All right, we'll scroll up 426 because we're into the Arab Spring stuff. So what was the intended goals for Arab Spring? Well, they wanted more social freedom. They wanted less government restriction. They wanted more democracy. They wanted basically more freedom to be able to choose their own way of life and their own lifestyle. And unfortunately, for question 27, what actually happened was you got more government in social freedoms. You had more protest. You had less democracy. They really didn't get anything that they were after. Unfortunately, what they got was less and less in a lot. 28, what type of climate is found throughout sub-Saharan Africa? So we're moving to unit number 4 now, particularly around the equator. So that was going to be hot and humid rainforest types. 29 is, these are a diverse collection of plants and animals. It is savanna. 30, many of the waterways provide what benefit besides the simple transportation? That's hydroelectric power. So that's something that we don't really talk about, or we didn't really talk about in both North Africa and Russia, is the use of hydroelectric power on those rivers. 40, Most of the population, or 40% of the population, is under the age of 15. Remember, that creates that big problem because you had a lot of old people, you had a lot of very young people, not a lot of in between, which creates that problem of being able to have enough people in the workforce. All right, scrolling up again. 32, what is the role of the community within local cultures? So remember that community was everything. It's where it was all controlled from. It's how culture spreads. It's how those people were influenced. Remember when we say that it takes a village to raise a child? In this particular case, it was actually true. They really did have a lot of cultural influence in that particular situation. 33, most literature can be divided by what massive event? That's European colonization. When the Europeans come in, it changes everything, especially when it comes to literature. 34, Chinua Achebe wrote what groundbreaking book? Things Fall Apart. And his book was about British colonialism and how his country and all that kind of stuff changed dramatically, and the horrors that come with being part of European colonization. 36, what's the largest religion in the region of sub-Saharan Africa? That is Christianity. 37, what hinders their ability to export their resources? So remember, this was an area that had a bunch of different resources, things like silver and diamonds and gold and platinum and all kinds of stuff that they would mine, copper, coal. But what hinders their ability? Lack of infrastructure. Remember that most of the population did not live within 2 miles of an all-weather road. So they would have to walk very far or, get a bike and be able to bike into town to sell their stuff. So that lack of infrastructure really hinders their ability to be economically successful. 38, what's the holy city? That's Jerusalem, starting the last unit that we talked about, unit number 5. 39, what religion originally created Jerusalem? That would be Judaism. Abraham was the first start of that. 40, what is the role of women in Arab culture? That was to take care of the household and family, but they are also very submissive to men in that respect. 41, what book is written about a collection of stories told over 1001 nights? That's Arabian Nights, or 1001 Nights if you want to be technical about it. And then 42, with the rise of the Arab states, who did they conflict with? The Jews. All right, that is all for page 1. Again, if you have questions as you went through this, please do shoot me an email. Otherwise, hopefully you have all of page 1. And again, if you don't, please shoot me an email. Do something that way that I know that you're working and trying your hardest to be ready and be prepared for this final exam.